Prior to undertaking this assessment task, I never really appreciated the importance of how different cultural and schooling experiences can shape one's identity. Throughout my entire life, I've lived within a middle to high socioeconomic neighbourhood, located in the suburbs of Melbourne. As such, I was sent to a reputable primary school and high school, where I gained many positive memories. This was in terms of the relationships I had constructed with my teachers and peers. Therefore, as I've lacked exposure to diverse cultures and way of living, I have grown up with a rather narrow perspective of the experiences had at educational institutions. I was fortunate enough to interview a family friend who was born in China and subsequently undertook schooling there. I found this conversation to be very intriguing as it allowed me to see past my own beliefs. Firstly, she described how in China there was a strong emphasis on teaching discipline from a very young age. Specifically, she reflected upon a time when she was 7 years old, where she was forced to spend weekly classes that were dedicated towards sitting in silence. Her hands were required behind her back and feet flat on the ground, and as such, she described this as an experience that resembled an army camp. Due to this strict enforcement that was imposed at a very young age, she believed that it had a negative impact on her identity formation. This was because she went to school in fear of her teachers, as they constantly exerted their dominance over the students. This shows that teachers play a crucial role in the development of how an individual perceives themselves and the environment around them. In contrast, I remember my teachers were very encouraging and allowed us to use our creativity and imagination. Whilst there was an element of discipline involved, a large portion of my early school years involved play, drawing, story writing, and socializing. I believe that this had a positive influence on my identity, as it enabled me to explore my own interests and ideas. Another cultural difference that was evident throughout the discussion was the emphasis on exam preparation from a very early age. My family friend mentioned how in China, kids as young as 4 were sent to private tutoring lessons to undertake exam papers. She described that this teaching style was very regimented because it largely focused on rote learning. Therefore, she was part of a culture that signified the importance of doing well academically. Not only did she have to do private tutoring, but she often spent up to 8 hours a night to complete assigned homework, even when she was 6 and 7. This was really shocking to me because the strict routine that she described was very different to my own experience. One thing I found very interesting was that China's strong focus on individual results is because of the lack of job opportunities that are available. Due to the immense population, many parents pressure their children to do well at school in order to attain a high-status job, such as a doctor. I am now aware of how fortunate I am to live in a culture that embraces my own interests. Throughout school, I never felt pressured to pursue a certain career pathway, and instead, I was encouraged to follow my own passions. Whilst I did undertake exams and at times felt stressed to do well academically, it was never to the extent that was described by my family friend. One last point that was made was the social barriers she faced throughout school. As China's culture focused on individual results and successes, she was never encouraged to work in groups and explore different ideas. This impacted on her identity as she lacked the confidence and ability to collaborate with others. Interestingly, she moved to Australia to undertake her tertiary studies at La Trobe University and described this experience to be a huge cultural shock. This was because, in contrast to China, she said that La Trobe encouraged inclusive learning environments and embraced the value of teamwork. She found that she felt more comfortable to express her own ideas and think about concepts in a more abstract way. This had a positive influence on her, both socially and mentally. This example shows how two different cultures can value many different things. When reflecting on this, it makes me aware of how important culture and education is when shaping a person's values and beliefs. From experience, there were some instances throughout school where Chinese people who immigrated over to Australia resembled the characteristics that were described by my family friend. Many Chinese friends in my classes focused on attaining higher results and dedicated a large portion of their time to studying. Therefore, this highlights how they're embracing the values that have been enforced within their culture. In the reading entitled How Does Othering Constitute Cultural Discrimination?, it discusses how individuals who migrate to Australia are required to make decisions that can affect their identities. It suggests that some people retain aspects of their dominant culture, whilst others will adapt and change. I found this to be very applicable to the experiences that were shared by my family friend. This is because in China, she felt very suppressed due to the constant pressure from parents and teachers to do well at school. When moving to Australia to pursue her degree, she began to immerse herself within the Australian culture, and as such, taken a new cultural identity. Not only did she learn the English language, but she took part in many social activities to improve her teamwork and communication skills. Within this reading as well, the term othering was emphasized a lot. This is a particularly important term that I should know and consider during my teaching career. Currently, I'm very comfortable with my own culture, and during my time at school, I regarded this as the norm. I often stereotyped other people who were deemed different to me, and never truly considered the array of factors that make up a person's identity. This is because throughout primary school and high school, I was never really exposed to different cultures, which limited my capacity to see past my own values and beliefs. Now that I've had the opportunity to speak to someone from a different culture, I now understand the significance of developing an awareness of others. As discussed in the Chappelli reading, students who form relationships with diverse groups of people are likely to develop important skills such as empathy and compassion. As Australia is becoming more culturally diverse, it's important for me as a teacher to embrace every student's differences. It's also important for me to make them aware of differences within our society, as well as advocate acceptance and inclusion. My family friend is one example of how culture and education can influence someone positively or negatively. As I will be teaching many students from different cultures, I now know to appreciate everyone's unique upbringing. Not only this, but I believe that it will be a valuable experience for me to participate in a range of community activities in order to improve my capacity of understanding and embracing cultural diversity. This interview has made me realize that I need to be more empathetic towards people from different backgrounds. This is because ultimately, as a teacher, I will have a fundamental role in shaping a student's identity.